Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, and in today's video I'm going to be giving out some mid-season grades for NBA teams, because believe it or not, at this point in the season, basically every team has played about half their games, about 41 to this point, and in today's video I'm going to be giving mid-season grades for the Eastern Conference, and then in tomorrow's I'll be doing the Western Conference. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Alright, so starting off in reverse order of the standings is going to be the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm going to give them a D. And the reason for this is simply because obviously their record is not very good at all. I didn't feel comfortable giving them an F because it's not like we expected them to be really good, but I also expected them to win more than 9 of their first 41 games. The John Collins suspension certainly doesn't help, and that definitely brought down their grade. And, you know, guys like Cam Reddish not really getting off to a very good start in their NBA careers is not great either. Now, obviously, Trae Young has been outstanding from a statistical standpoint, but pretty much every other piece of their roster has had issues, whether it's Collins' suspension or Kevin Huerter trying to return from injury, Cam Reddish's tough start, DeAndre Hunter being a little bit up and down. There are some bright spots, like guys like Jabari Parker kind of finding their role, but to this point, it doesn't really seem like this is a team that's all that connected, and they're definitely going to have to evaluate where they're at in this rebuild this offseason. Next up now, the New York Knicks. I'm going to give them a D as well, sitting at just 11 wins for their first 43 or so games, and just a team that has had, you know, some drama around them with the Fizdale firing. And again, I don't feel comfortable giving them an F because this is a roster that was not put together in a manner that you would expect to win games. Like, there's a good amount of talent here, but most of it is consolidated in the front court or just at the point guard spot, as we've talked about. And guys like Dennis Smith Jr. have not really developed. Kevin Knox has been in and out of the rotation. RJ Barrett has had some good moments, but overall this has not been, you know, a Knicks season that you really feel great about, even with, you know, some of the talent that they do have on the roster. Maybe they'll make some moves, maybe there'll be, you know, like a Julius Randle trade in the works at some point, but for right now this has not been a very good team. Moving on now to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I'm actually going to give them a D-. Again, an F seems a little bit harsh given the fact that there's just not a lot of talent on this roster, but when you consider the number of issues that this team has had, you know, I think it's fair to give them a D- over some of the other teams I just talked about getting a D, because you're talking about, you know, the John Beilein situation with last week where he called, you know, his team thugs and then thought that that wasn't actually what he said. And then there's the Kevin Love stuff where he's clearly very unhappy. He wants to be traded. Just the John Beilein situation in general is not going very well. So just those things added on to the team not playing well, I feel like definitely necessitates them being a slightly lower grade than teams like the Hawks and the Knicks. Okay, now we're getting to some slightly more positive stuff. And next up is the Washington Wizards. And I'm going to give them a C, because before the season, I thought this team legitimately had probably the worst talent level in the entire league on their roster, outside of maybe the Charlotte Hornets, just because it was pretty much Bradley Beal and nobody else. I mean, maybe Isaiah Thomas was going to do some things, but outside of that, you know, they were going to be counting on Rui Hachimura, maybe Troy Brown Jr., but now it's been the Davis Bertans show, and they have been, I would say, above expectations, but I didn't feel comfortable giving them like a B+ or anything. So I think a C to C+ is fair for this team. They're probably not going to play all that well in the second half of the year. They're probably going to trade off some parts and begin to tank, but they've been better than I thought they would be. All right, now we get to our first true positive grade on this list, and it's going to be the Charlotte Hornets, and I'm going to give them a B+, because I said multiple times before the season that I thought that this was going to be one of the worst teams in the entire league, if not the worst team in the league. Just looking at their roster, losing their 2 leading scorers from last year in Kemba Walker and Jeremy Lamb, and not really replacing them with a whole lot, mostly just Terry Rozier. But this team has been one of the pleasant surprises. They've been sliding a little bit recently, but Devontae Graham is a legitimate all-star candidate, putting up pretty historic numbers from three-point range in terms of volume as well as efficiency. Terry Rozier hasn't been nearly as bad as I thought he would be from an efficiency standpoint, and guys like PJ Washington are stepping up for this team as well. So relative to the expectations I had for this team coming into the season, for them to be sitting at 15-29, which doesn't sound great, but again, they've been on a bit of a losing streak, I feel comfortable giving them a B+. Moving on now to the Detroit Pistons, and I'm going to give them a C. Reason being, you know, if Blake Griffin was healthy for this entire season, they're probably in the playoffs right now. They're probably in the top 8 seeds. It's been a real struggle for him to get healthy. His season is now over. The Andre Drummond stuff has definitely been an issue. Derrick Rose has been playing really well for this team, especially lately. So there are some bright spots. Luke Kennard is starting to look like a better player than he was in his first 2 seasons. But overall, I mean, for a team that, you know, made the postseason last year and is now sitting at 12 games under 500, I can't really give them a grade better than a C. Next up now, the Chicago Bulls, which is a team that really struggled in the beginning of the season, but now finds themselves just 3 games out of the 8th seed in a very, very weak back end of the Eastern Conference. I'm also going to give them a C. And if this was like 2 weeks into the season, this grade would have been much, much worse. And I still think that Jim Boylen needs to go and he should not be the head coach of this team. But they've started to turn some things around. Lauri Markkanen started to play better. They're starting to get a little bit better defensively. And once they get fully healthy and all of their guys are active, I think this could potentially be a playoff team in the East. Now they're going to have to beat, some teams like the Magic and the Nets to get into that top 8, so I'm not sure that it's going to happen, but based off of how their season started, their grade has definitely been climbing. So again, I'm going to give them an average grade of about a C. Moving on now to the Brooklyn Nets, and I'm going to give them a C-. They're sitting at 18-22, which is technically in the 8th seed, but as I said, there are a couple of teams within a few games of them for that 8th spot, and this is a tough team to grade because, you're missing Karis LeVert and Kyrie Irving for like 2 months combined, and Spencer Dinwiddie really had to carry this team. But just based off the expectations that I had and that many people had for this team coming into the season, the 8th seed is not ideal, and there's definitely some Kyrie stuff going on where even his comments most recently as last night about this team aren't ideal for him to be saying publicly. There was some drama with his injury and what it actually was and what he thought it was compared to what the team thought it was. So there's definitely some drama with this team, so I can't really give them an average grade based off of their record as well as all that, so I'm going to give them a C-. Moving on now to the Orlando Magic, sitting at 20-21 and in the 7th seed as of the recording of this video. I'm going to give them a B-, and the reason I'm giving them slightly better than a C is because of the Markelle Fultz thing. I think it's really awesome that they were able to unlock and find a way to get this guy to be confident on the court. He's playing extremely well for them. It's an outstanding trade that they made last year, and I don't know if it was just he needed to go anywhere but Philadelphia, or if there's something specifically that Orlando has been doing with him to raise up his confidence level and to get him to believe once again that he is going to be a good NBA player. And at the beginning of the season, this team was certainly down in terms of their own expectations. Mo Bamba has still been struggling at times. Maybe there's a move to be made for this team, but for them to be right around 500 based off the way they started the year, and again, I'm giving them a little bit of extra credit because of the Markelle Fultz thing, I think a B- is fair. Next up now, the Philadelphia 76ers, which are actually sitting at the 6th seed, by the way, as of today at 26-16. This is a tough team to grade because based off their expectations prior to this year, 26-16 isn't great. Joel Embiid has missed some games, but I'm going to give them a B- as well. And, they definitely have some moves to make, and it's not all doom and gloom, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get to the end of the year and they're the 2 seed. But just, again, based off expectations, this team should be better than 10 games above 500. And I know that they've only played 42 games, so how good of a record can you really expect out of this team when they've got so many new pieces and they're still trying to figure it out? But based off the talent and most specifically the defensive talent on this roster, I would have expected them to be better than this from a record standpoint, so I'm going to give them a B-. Moving on now to the Indiana Pacers, currently sitting at the 5 seed in the East at 26-15. I'm going to give them an A. I'm not comfortable giving them an A+ because I'm reserving that for teams that are really, really playing at an outstanding level. But when you think about this team having to integrate new pieces, having to bring in Malcolm Brogdon, and really not getting off to a very good start at all in the beginning of the year, then having some injury issues, obviously coming into the season with Victor Oladipo, but also having Miles Turner missing some games. Domantas Sabonis looks like a potential all-star caliber player. This team has outperformed expectations based off, again, not having Victor Oladipo throughout this entire season to this point. They've managed to integrate some of the new pieces really well, and I've been really impressed with them to this point, so I'm going to give them our first A of the video. Moving on now to the Toronto Raptors, currently sitting at the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to give them an A as well. When you consider, losing Kawhi Leonard and still finding a way to be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference at the moment, as I said, a top 4 seed. And, Pascal Siakam in the beginning of the year looking like a potential MVP candidate. Fred VanVleet stepping up as well into his new role. Kyle Lowry has missed some games, but this team has still managed to be 12 games above 500. So in terms of their expectations before the year, this is definitely an A season for them so far. Moving on now to number 3 at 27-12 is the Boston Celtics, and I'm going to give them an A as well. This is a team that I thought was talented, but I didn't really know what they were going to do with the 5 spot. I believed that Kemba Walker was a better fit for Brad Stevens' offense than Kyrie, but I still wanted to see it and see how those other guys, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, were going to fit around him. And I think this team is a real threat in the postseason, especially if they make a move to upgrade at the 5 spot. So I'm definitely going to give them an A so far. Moving on now to the 2nd seed, the Miami Heat. I'm going to give them an A+, because this is a team that coming into the season we knew was talented. They're bringing in Jimmy Butler, but the Tyler Hero stuff, the Kendrick Nunn stuff, and the Bam Adebayo stuff is the most impressive thing about this team. I mean, Tyler Hero pretty immediately in Summer League and in preseason established himself as a guy to watch, but he's been a legit scorer for a really good team in the Eastern Conference to this point in the season. And then you've got the Bam Adebayo stuff where he is looking like at times an all-star with his two-way versatility. And then Kendrick Nunn being, a bit of a surprise as an undrafted guy that, has been a really good scorer for them as well. And just on every single night, you never know who's going to hurt you for Miami. They're deep, they're versatile, and I'm going to give them an A+ because I thought they would be good, but 28-12 is a whole new level of good for me. And then last up now is a pretty obvious one, the Milwaukee Bucks sitting at 36-6 to this point in the season. I'm going to give them an A+. They have had to deal without Chris Middleton at times. They have, beat up on some bad competition, and they've won the games against good teams when they've needed to. And from a record standpoint, you really couldn't have expected them to be much better than 36-6. They had the long win streak, during the season that they eventually lost to the Mavs, and they broke that winning streak. But I don't see how I could give the Milwaukee Bucks anything but an A+. And there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Like I said in the beginning, tomorrow's video will be about the Western Conference, as today's was about the Eastern Conference in terms of mid-season NBA grades. But once again, my name is Tucker. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.